Excellent, excellent. If I haven't had a chance to meet you, my name is Chris. I'm lead pastor here at Hoboken Grace. Wow, 18 years. Unbelievable how God has continued to allow us to help people find their way back to God for so many years now. It's just amazing. And so, Father, we are so incredibly grateful for that. And as we come together today, we have a lot to celebrate. Our birthday, we also, I don't want to move past this. I also want to celebrate what happened on Friday night with Night to Shine. If you were here, man, it was an unbelievable experience. This whole building was filled with individuals with special needs, all sorts of different needs, and they were just celebrating. And we had a blast. This whole area was just a dance party, and they were dancing. I mean, we were dancing all night long. It was incredible. And the thing that I love about that is it's another way that God is continuing to open doors for us to expand our ability to be able to love our community. It's really remarkable. And as I said, we've got a lot to celebrate, but we have a lot to cover. So I'm going to jump into this. We could spend all day celebrating, but we're going to jump into this because today we are wrapping up this conversation that we have been in the midst of called When the Dream Dies. And we've been moving through this book of Ruth that we find in the Jewish scriptures, the Old Testament, that speaks directly to these moments. And some of us, when we're going through those moments, these moments that so often derail our faith, when we're going through those moments of loss where that thing that you've worked for, the thing you love is gone, when we're going through those moments, oftentimes we're told, hey, listen, you can't really know what God's doing here. And we almost interact with it like God's just silent in those moments. You just got to blindly trust him. I don't think that's true at all. And hopefully as we've been moving through this book, you've seen that God wants to speak directly to those moments. It's why I believe he gives us this story, because this is the ultimate of those moments. Naomi's lost her husband. She's lost her sons. Ruth has lost her husband. In every way imaginable, their life as they knew it is gone. It's gone. It's one of those moments. And God brings us into this story, and he presents us with two ways to be able to experience those moments. We've seen this. That Ruth experiences it one way. Naomi experiences it in a very different way. Naomi becomes angry and bitter. She rejects God. Ruth, on the other hand, clings to God, is pursuing community. Very different experiences of this moment. And God's presenting us with two different ways that you can experience when the dream dies. But through all of it, God has been working. Ruth has seen it, experienced it. She's been part of it. God has been working. A little while ago, Naomi finally woke up to what God's doing and realize, oh my goodness, he's actually been in this from the beginning. And we've seen a shift in her where rather than moving away from God, she's beginning to move towards God for the first time because of Ruth's faith and faithfulness and service. And so she's beginning to move towards God. And then last week we saw the redemption where Boaz steps in and redeems the family, buys back the family's property, takes Ruth as his wife, and all of a sudden the story has been redeemed. And I hope that you saw this last week. If you didn't listen to last week, make sure you go back and listen to it, because the beauty of this is that God doesn't, through the story, figure out how he's going to redeem what has happened. It's not that we get into this moment and God's like, oh, I got to figure out how to redeem this. What I love about this, that God is presenting us with this reality, that from the beginning of the story, the redemption plan was already there. That's why we see these little hints as you move through the story, that the Redeemer was already planned. And so they returned home as the barley harvest was beginning. As it turned out, she was in Boaz's field. The redemption was planned from the beginning. It wasn't an afterthought. He didn't have to figure it out. He knew it. And we walk through this incredible reality that that's true about your story too. The redemption was planned from the beginning. How Jesus was going to give his life to buy us back from the righteous punishment that we deserved. The redemption was planned from the beginning. And last week we saw that redemption inside of this family. And that's where we pick up today as we move into the final chapter. It says this, "Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, 'Today you are my witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabitess, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from the town records.'" And so he redeems this family. "Today you are witnesses," and this is really the moment that Ruth now becomes his wife. And as that happens, the elders speak a blessing into this moment. "Then the elders and all those at the gate said, 'We are witnesses.'" And then they speak this blessing, which is kind of like a wedding toast. And so this is the moment where, okay, now she becomes his wife, and the elders are speaking into this moment, a wedding toast. Listen, I've gone to a lot of weddings. I've done a lot of weddings. Our church is very young. I've done a lot of weddings over the years. It's gotten to the point where when it's time for wedding toasts, I just leave the room. It's awful. It's so painful. No best man should ever be given a mic. That's just a baseline rule of life. Never, ever give your best man a mic. It doesn't go well 95% of the time. And honestly, when you start to read this, you're thinking, who let this guy talk? So listen to the blessing that they speak over this couple. "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel." Again, a reference back to the story of Jacob, by the way, if you're keeping track as we move through this book. But he says, may your story be like the story of Rachel and Leah. Really? Do you know the story of Rachel and Leah? They're constantly fighting. There's all of this brokenness. There's like their kids literally sell one of the other kids into slavery. You be like, what? What are you guys talking about? But then they keep talking. Not only do they say, "May it be like the house of Rachel and Leah," but then it continues. "May you have standing and be famous in Bethlehem through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman. May your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah." What? Do you know that story? Let me give you the short form of that story. Judah isn't taking care of his daughter-in-law like he's supposed to through the redemption process, isn't actually taking care of her, so she pretends to be a prostitute, sleeps with her father-in-law, and has Perez. May it be like that. Are you serious? That's when you're like, okay, take the mic. Take this. What are you talking about? May it not be like that. What are they saying? I love this moment because it speaks to the reality that the elders knew what we're just learning. And the elders know that this moment has been filled with a lot of pain. And so their blessing recognizes the pain of the story. Their blessing recognizes the brokenness of the story. But the elders know, God's always redeeming. And so they say, may it be like those other stories where God took what looked like it was unredeemable and did something magnificent. May it be like that. And I don't think they're so much saying, may it be. What they're saying is, it's going to be. This is going to be like that. And yeah, it's been dark. And yeah, it's been broken. But you know what we know about God? He always redeems. He always redeems. May it be like that. May you know and experience that. This is one of the reasons why over the years I've taught our church family that when you're in those moments, you need to change the question. Change the question from why. All of us ask the question why. Wrong question. The question isn't why, the question is how. God, how are you working? Not why did this happen? You're very seldom going to get the answer to that question, but you can get the answer to the question of how. How are you working? Because I know you are always working, and I know that you will redeem. So how? And if you go back to last week again, he doesn't just say that Jesus gave his life for us to be redeemed, but he also says, I'm going to redeem everything in your life. I use everything in your life for your good. The redemption plan is already in place. So how? It's a different question. And these elders know that he's going to. And so they speak this blessing into this moment. And then it continues. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. Then he went to her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you." And you see that line again. What is it that Naomi said that she was? That God had left her what? We've been moving through this for 5 weeks, people. 5 weeks. She says that God has left her empty. Count of three, say empty. 1, 2, 3. Empty. God has left me empty. And over again, what have we seen? She's anything but empty. Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a kinsman redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Not just empty, but better. Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her lap and cared for him. Now, this is the 4th phrase. We've been talking about these phrases that speak to the unnamed character, that speak to what God's doing in the story. And so as the barley harvest was beginning, it so happened she was in the field. This is the 4th of those phrases, in her lap. This phrase is used 3 times in the book of Genesis. Guess whose story it's used in? Jacob. 3 times in the story of Jacob, we see this phrase. The first one is when Rachel is in a dark moment and takes control. And because she takes control instead of trusting God, it brings destruction. The second one is when Jacob is holding his grandchildren. And the one that he thought was dead, Joseph, he now has seen his son. Not only has he seen his son, Joseph, but he's seen his grandkids. And he's celebrating God's redemption. And then the third one is really interesting. It's when Joseph is holding his grandchildren and he's looking forward to God's redemption. And so he says to his family, he says, when you go back to the promised land, because I know you're going, I know God is faithful, I know God's going to redeem. He's looking forward to it. He says, when you go back to the promised land, take my bones with you. Those are the 3 times that this phrase is used. And then you see it again here. Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her lap. And you see Naomi celebrating. He always redeems. He always redeems. The women living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Yeah, that David. The greatest king in the history of the nation of Israel. And so you see her. I told you at the beginning, it's named Ruth, but it's not about Ruth. And so the story begins with who? Naomi. And the story ends with who? Naomi. But in very different places. So she sits there holding the baby. Now, be careful with this. Be careful with this, because I've heard many people interact with this passage and they'll turn it into a Christian cliche. And some of those really nice sounding things that we say, but are really destructive. And so you come to the end of it, and she's holding this baby, and it's this incredible celebration. And make no mistake about it, it's absolutely a celebration. But sometimes people will come to the end of the story, and they'll say things, well, yeah, listen, this proves God has something better in store. So no matter what you're going through, don't worry, there's something better in store. Or maybe another one that you've heard, or maybe another one that you've shared is, God will replace what is lost. I mean, look at this. She's got the baby. God will replace what is lost. Or one of the other ones, and people used to say this to us all the time after we had Kale. My second son has Down syndrome, for those of you who don't know. And they'll say, listen, it just shows that God will never give you more than you can handle. And I've heard people interact with this story and come away with those cliches. You're not reading the story right. This story flies in the face of those cliches. This was more than Naomi could handle. This was way more than Naomi could handle. Listen to me. God will allow you to experience things that are beyond you. As a matter of fact, sometimes God is intentional with things that are beyond you so that you realize how you need him. And this idea that God will not give you more than you can handle is actually a misreading of a passage in Scripture that's talking about temptation. And God says he will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you can handle. That's not about pain, that's about temptation. And this story flies in the face of that. This was beyond her. As a matter of fact, the only hope she had was God. It was way beyond her. God's going to replace. Don't read this as God replacing. Listen, I want you to actually put yourself in the story. I want you to actually put yourself in the story. Oh, God did something better. That is not what Naomi's experiencing. Put yourself into the story. She's holding that baby. Who is she thinking about? Her husband and her son. I promise you. She's holding that baby and she's thinking, I wish you could have seen this. I wish you could have been here. If you've ever experienced loss like that, you know it's true. And you experience incredible moments. And you experience the joy of that moment. But there's also something inside of you that still aches. Because you wish, I wish they were here to experience this. I wish they were here to see this. We experienced this on Friday. On Friday, we were celebrating, and there was an individual who was here. She's not a part of Hoboken Grace, but she was part of the event and helping us out with the event. And as we were moving through the night, she was talking with Anna and I. She was celebrating everything that was happening. She's thinking, man, this is incredible. Then she started crying, and she's like, I'm sorry, I'm crying. I said, listen, I cry on stage all the time. Don't worry about it. And she said, I'm sorry. This is just so incredible. But you have to understand, my brother with Down syndrome passed away a couple of years ago. And I wish he could have experienced this. That's exactly what Naomi was experiencing. This doesn't replace what is lost. You don't replace your boys, ever. It's not a thing. It's not a possibility. You don't replace your husband. It's not a thing. Not a possibility. I remember when my grandfather was passing away, my grandmother had passed away years before, and I sat there with him. He had a couple of hours before he was going to be gone, and he had remarried, but I sat with him and I said, what are you looking forward to? He said, I just can't wait to see her again. You don't replace that. Listen to me. Listen to me. If someone tells you that the redemption takes away the pain, or that the redemption replaces what is lost, they're lying to you. That's not what redemption does. But what it does do, redemption doesn't eliminate the pain, but what it does do is it introduces a new dream. It doesn't mean that the pain of the lost dream is gone. That's not a thing. No. But what it does do is it introduces a new dream. And in this moment, as she's sitting there with this baby, she's still feeling the pain of the loss. She's still wishing that they were here, but there's a new dream. As a matter of fact, there's multiple new dreams. There's the new dream of that baby, the new dream of what the family is going to look like, but that's not the most significant new dream. The new dream for Naomi, as she's sitting there in this moment, is the dream of knowing and walking with a God that loves her more than she's ever thought possible. The greatest new dream is not the daughter-in-law, the son-in-law, the baby. No, the greatest new dream is, oh my goodness, I am so much more loved than I ever thought. The new dream is, I know no matter what comes ahead of me, I know that I have a God who's never going to stop working, who's always redeeming, who's always with me, and pursues me in a way that no one else ever would. No one else ever would. And as Naomi sits in this moment, she's not satisfied because of the baby. She's satisfied because she went running home and found her father with arms open wide, and realized a depth of relationship with God she never dreamed possible. Listen to me. We know that she had faith before the beginning of the story. She believed that she was loved at one time. When this story comes to a close, she knows it. She knows it. That's a new dream. She knows I can go through the darkest of moments, the greatest of loss, and still be drowning in love. I can go through the darkest of moments, the greatest of loss. He's always with me. I have one I can go to, that I can cling to, one that I can turn to who will always be there. I asked you weeks ago, who do you go to in those moments? Who's that person who brings comfort? Who do you want there in that moment? I asked you why, if God was on that list, why not? As you come to the end of this story, for Naomi, God has now come to the top of that list. And she realizes, not only is he at the top of that list, but I can go to him at any time, anywhere. For some of you, it's a friend, but that friend can't always be there, can they? For some of you, it's a parent, but that parent won't always be there, will they? He will. And he is. And he can be that in your life. And that's the dream that Naomi is awakening to. And listen to me. This is so important. Listen to me. When you look at that thing that you took out of the box, or when you look at your moment of loss, or that moment when that dream died for you, listen to me. I don't know all the ways God's going to redeem that. He's going to redeem it in a bunch of different ways. I promise you that. I don't know all the ways that he's going to do it. I know that he's going to do it. But I do know one way in which he's going to redeem it. And that's exactly how he redeemed it for Naomi. The one way that he wants to redeem it is for you to experience his love more than ever before. For you to know an intimacy with your Creator that you've only dreamed of. For you to have a relationship with him that you know you are always pursued, that he never stops working, that the redemption plan is in place, that you can walk through those dark moments and he is with you through it all. Exactly what David knew and understood when he wrote that psalm. Though I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, he's with me. He knew it. And that's what he wants for you to know. And he uses every pain and every loss to awaken us to that dream. He redeems it that way every time. Every time. You say, I don't know how he's going to redeem it. I know one way he's going to redeem it. Every time I know how he's going to redeem it. And he's moving us towards that dream every time we experience loss, whether it comes from the sin of someone else or the brokenness of the world, whatever brings it into our life, he's going to use it in one way, I promise you. And Naomi, in this moment, experiences that dream. And God presents us with these moments. He shows us the one way that he's always going to be working, that you can count on, that you can bet on, that you can rely on, that you can look forward to. And then he says, okay, now you get to choose how you're going to experience this moment. And this story presents us with this question. When you move through these moments, how will you experience it? And this is the crazy thing for me. This is the thing that blows my mind. The thing that blows my mind is that Ruth and Naomi both experience it very differently. In both of their lives, God continues to work, he's faithful, he pursues, and he redeems. And they both experience the redemption. They both experience the redemption. They both experience God more. They both experience what he's doing in the story, everything, all the different ways. They both experience the redemption. However, their experience of the journey was very different, wasn't it? Ruth experienced God through the whole thing. Naomi was miserable through most of it and missed God through most of it. And so God comes to us, and I've had this conversation with my staff members so many different times as they're walking through these moments, and they'll walk into it, and I'll sit down across from them, and I'll say, okay, listen, this is really, really, really hard, but you have a choice of how you move through this moment. The crazy thing is, how you move through it won't impact whether or not God redeems. Do you see that? Do you see that? Naomi did it wrong, and God still redeemed. Isn't that crazy? God shouldn't have done it. Yeah, he should have redeemed Ruth's story. Naomi should be out of the story. She's done. Look at how she handled it. The crazy thing is that God is so kind and loving and gracious in your life that even when you do it the wrong way, he's still going to redeem it. But it drastically changes your experience. And so you get to choose, will I experience him through it? Or will I only experience him at the end of it? You get to choose. Will you push him away or will you cling? Now, the good news is that along the journey, Naomi turns back to him. And because she turns back to him, she experiences the redemption. It's not, now don't miss this. I'm not saying because she turns back to him, God redeemed. No, because she turns back to him, she experiences the redemption. She could have stayed bitter and she would have missed it. I've seen bitter grandmothers. I've seen a lot of them. She could have been the bitter grandmother. She could have missed the redemption. She actually could have. And this is really important. Because God is going to redeem, but you can miss it. You can miss it. As a matter of fact, some of you are here, and Jesus has given his life to buy you back from the just punishment that we deserve. He's given his life, but you keep saying no to him. And if you keep saying no to him, you're going to miss the redemption. He doesn't force himself on anyone. And you can miss it. You got to turn back. For others of you, you've experienced him redeeming you in that way, but as you moved through that moment, you started to keep him at arm's length. You said, no, I'll trust you with a lot of things. I'm not trusting you with my heart anymore, and you've kept him at arm's length. And because of that, you're missing the redemption. You're missing the relationship that he wants to call you into. You're missing the beauty of what he wants to bring out of it. Not because he hasn't done it. He's done it. You're just missing it. He's done it. The plan is in place. The plan might already be fully executed. You're just missing it because you're keeping him at arm's length. You got to turn back. You got to turn back. You got to decide, no, I'm going to trust you with my heart again. You have to decide to cling. To once again cling to the one who loves you most. I know you don't understand the plan, but you don't have to understand the plan to know that he's always working, to know that he's pursued you, even when you walked away from him, even when you pushed him away, that he's pursued you, that he's faithful to redeem, and that he loves you more than anyone else. But you have to trust him with your heart again, which means that you have to cling. Now, we've been talking about this from the beginning, and people have been asking me this question. I don't have a great answer for it, but I'm going to give you my best answer. Because from the beginning, people have been asking me. We talked about Ruth clinging. They've been asking me, what does it look like to cling to God? But what does that look like? And I don't think there's any process or system to this, but I can talk you through what it has looked like in my life. And it has everything to do with changing God's position in the conversation for me. How you think about God as you engage him is very important. How you picture him is very important because it speaks to who you think he is and how he operates. And so some of you, when you pray to a bright light because he's impersonal and distant. For some of you, he's on a throne, and that's how you see him, and he's ruler. But the reality is that the primary relationship that God invites us into is the relationship of a father. After Jesus gives his life, the primary relationship that he wants to have with us is that of a father. And so it's important how you picture him. It's also important how you engage the conversation. Now, I learned this from my wife years ago, as most of the great things that I've learned, that's where they come from. But we had just gotten married, and inside of conflict, as we engaged conflict, we began to notice something. And there's a couple different things that we notice. One is that when I get into conflict, I move away from the person. And so I start to create distance. I also, growing up, was taught that in conflict, it's really helpful to go away, recompose yourself, and come back. All right? If you come from a broken family, that's not a possibility. And I grew up in a family where divorce was never really a thing. Her family had kind of, they're together and love one another, but they had a time where that was a possibility. And so for Anna, the idea of moving away or that you would leave was not an option because you might not come back. For me, that was never a thought or a possibility. But if you come from a broken family, you can watch this in your own life. You do not like the idea that we'll resolve it later. No, it has to be resolved now. Why? Because, it might end. And so we were watching this play out, this dynamic play out, and we were trying to get creative on how to engage conflict together. And so my wife came up with this idea. She said, well, what if when we were engaging conflict, and what if we held hands? This was not my idea, clearly, if you know me. If you know me at all, you know I don't like holding hands. I hate holding hands. It's not my thing. I don't know why people like it. But I was like, I love you. Yes. Okay. We will try this. And what we found was really significant because, two things. One is it's really hard to yell at someone when you're holding their hand. There's actually a dynamic that changes with physical touch. There's a dynamic that changes something in your heart. It actually does. But the other thing, too, that we recognize is that in order to hold hands, we didn't stand across from each other holding hands like we were at a wedding. That'd be weird. So we would typically sit down on the couch and we would hold hands. But it changed her position in the conversation. And I noticed that position change drastically impacted me. Because when you're across from me, you're opposed to me. When you're beside me, you're with me. When you're across from me, well, I can be angry. But when you're beside me, all of a sudden, we're in this together. And so I told you about that retreat that I went on years ago that changed everything for me. And one of the really significant things at that retreat is all of a sudden God moved from being across from me to where I just pictured him sitting on the bench next to me. And I laid my head on his shoulder, and I just shared my heart. But he wasn't opposed to me. He was with me. All of a sudden, we were in it together. And you say, that's just a mental thing. Yeah. But I believe if you're having this conversation with him and he's across from you, he's opposed to you, he's opposite you, that's not your reality. Your mental picture does not fit reality because he is not opposed to you, he is with you. And you can't cling to someone who's opposed to you. But that day, I wrapped my arms around him. And he wrapped his arms around me. And I clung to him. Don't miss the redemption. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I hope this is helpful. But do whatever it takes for you to awaken to your reality. Because that is your reality. God is in it with you. He is not opposed to you. He's not waiting to see, can you figure this out? Can you make this work? No. He is in it with you, and he is working for you. And the redemption plan is in place. So cling. I want to invite you today, just bow your heads right where you are. I want to invite you to shift his position. Shift his position. And as the band comes and as they sing this last song, I don't want you to stand up. Don't stand up. You're going to want to stand up. Don't stand up. I want you to stay seated. If you stand up, I'll come tap you on the shoulder. Don't stand up. I want you to stay right where you are. I want you to look back on that loss, that moment, that thing you took out of the box, or maybe the moment that you're in right now. And I want you to embrace your reality. Your Father is in it with you. To lay your head on his shoulder and just share your heart. We're going to sing over you, but you just share your heart. Your Father is in it with you. Jesus, we're so grateful. So grateful for all the different ways in which you work, but most profoundly, for how you use every one of these moments for us to awaken to your love more and more. In Jesus' name, amen.